meeting. I know we have several folks who are going to be joining us, and maybe we could just go on around and introduce ourselves. I'm David Wicks, and I'm chair of this working group, the nature-based recreation working group. I'm just going to go down the list over here on how it appears in my participation list. And we have Brewster. Who are you, Brewster, and where are you? What are you doing?
Well, I'm actually visiting my daughter in Sweden, but I live in Cincinnati, and I'm affiliated with the Adventure Crew organization. I'm the co-chair with David of the Ohio River Recreation Trail. Thank you.
Harry Stone.
I'm Harry Stone. I chair the Ohio River Basin Alliance.
And Mark Young.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm represent the Falls of the Ohio Foundation, Clarksville, Indiana, Louisville, Kentucky, and glad to be part of the group.
He also happens to be very involved in the National Park Association, and they're advertising and hiring an executive director right now. Billy Bennett.
Yes, my name is Billy Bennett. I'm the executive director of the Kentucky Environmental Education Council, which is a small state agency in the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet.
David Rudder.
I am David Rudder with Ohio, Kentucky, Indiana Regional Council of Governments.
Well, James Major.
I am representing RMS, River Management Society. Taking Reese's place today. She's traveling, and I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And Brad.
Hi, I'm Brad Collett, associate professor at the University of Tennessee Knoxville School of Landscape Architecture, and I direct the Tennessee Riverline Initiative, which is currently hiring a director of planning and design.
And is that position still open if somebody wants to apply for it?
Absolutely, yes. We haven't begun reviewing applications yet, so it's still wide open.
Well, I think it'd be a fascinating place to work, and that's actually a UT position.
It is. They would be a staff member here at the University of Tennessee and an employee of the state of Tennessee. So all benefits included.
Oh, thank you. Renee.
Hi, I'm Renee Dolney, and I am the director of the Chalfant Run, Thompson Run Watershed Association. We're in the eastern suburbs of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, so we drain into the Turtle Creek, which drains into the Allegheny. So we are the headwaters of the Ohio River. And we struggle with the usual suspects of acid mine drainage and roadside pollution.
Well, thank you for joining us, Renee. PJ. Mr. Donovan, we'll come back to him. How about Trish?
Hi, Trish Allison from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Outdoor enthusiast and yeah, also at the headwaters of the Ohio.
Two Pennsylvania folks. How wonderful. PJ, are you there now? He actually has two pieces on here. We'll get PJ to introduce himself when he gets voicemail. Here he is. PJ, who are you? We just did our introduction.
Hey, it's PJ Donovan. I'm with the Army Corps of Engineers, Planning Center of Expertise for Inland Navigation. Big recreational user of the system, kayaker. So just jumping in on the meeting to see what's going on. I think we had some very good conversation on the Ohio River Basin Inspection Tour. We ended the week strong with a great discussion on the Ohio River Water Trail, and like to keep that momentum going from how I could in my official capacities.
Well, welcome. And he is a bit humble to say he's just a kayaker. I would say a kayaker extraordinaire.
No, that's kind words. Kind words. Thank you.
Or fanatic.
I'm gonna share my screen here and just to sort of go over the agenda. And maybe we, in addition to what's on the agenda, we can just have a brief review of Orbit and the recreation piece. we want to spend most of our time on this number one, the Ohio River Conference coming up. If you've not registered, now's the time to register. I talked to Chris, and he says right about 80 people right now. He's thinking about 100. We have a request from another one of our working groups in Orba for research needs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then just want to share briefly this Ohio River Recreation Trail Summit that's coming up the week after that. And then we have 2 quick updates on the Ohio, the Outdoor Economy Conference that's going to be down by the Smoky Mountains. And then there's a fascinating request for proposals for conservation, recruitment, retention, and renovation. This comes from Vic Elam, and if Vic's going to be online, he said he was, we'd have him talk. Is there any other agenda items? And I'm adding in Orbit. Is there anything else? Any other working groups that want to have an update? Well, just briefly, we did have, the Army Corps of Engineers has their, the Orbit, which is the Ohio River Basin Inspection Tour that featured the 4 districts in the Ohio River Basin, Pittsburgh, Huntington, Louisville, and Nashville. And it was fascinating. I sent out the link to the PowerPoints, and hopefully we'll get copies of the presentations, because sometimes the PowerPoints just is that basic information. But the recreation piece was well received. We had a very energetic discussion for our piece with the recreation trail presentation on what Corps has done with several of the greenways that they've participated in. And if anybody wants any more information on those, certainly please feel free to get in touch with me. But before we move on, I just wanted to see if, Harry, you had any comments about the Orbit and what it might mean for all of us.
Thanks, David. One of the things I think it means is that that Orba has come a long way, because Orbit, Orba was founded back in 2009 because of a need for a collaborative voice for the basin. And now we are a recognized collaborative voice for the basin. We had 7 presenters over the course of Orbit. And our goals match up so well with the Corps'. I just think that there will be lots of opportunity to work together. And while we were invited to speak there, Colonel Peoples, commander of the division, will be speaking at Orbit. So I think it's a wonderful relationship.
We'll be speaking at the Ohio River Conference and Orbit, not Orbit, right?
Thank you. At our summit, yes.
Well, I also think it'd be a very good thing. I did send a follow-up to Colonel Peoples and suggested that we have several Cincinnati-based people within our recreation team and with the Ohio River Recreation Trail, that if she wanted to learn more about it, I volunteered Brewster to meet with her and have not heard back. So hopefully, Brewster, that's okay with you.
Oh no, I look forward to meeting with her when I get back. So it's wonderful that she's based in Cincinnati and has such an influential role. And PJ, if you have any advice about working with her or Harry, let me know, and I look forward to having a dialogue with her. Okay, great.
You know, one thing that also came out of it, we've worked a lot with the Louisville district and the PAS study that we'll talk about it in a minute. But we came to realize that Huntington covers, you know, certainly part of the region, certainly with the Ohio River Recreation Trail, but certainly for the Ohio River. And so how the districts can work together to promote recreation, I think would be a very powerful piece. And that's one thing I heard out of Orbit. Any other comments on Orbit or any follow-up that we need to do? Moving right along, I'd like to talk a little bit about this conference coming up. It's, the Orba and OrbCrate Symposium. It is on the 6th to the 8th. Registration still available. The schedule is sitting right here. It's very easy to register for it. And it appears to be a very well-rounded and energetic presentation conference. It's unfortunately, it's virtual this year. And I would have loved to have been able to stay at Lock House, but we're all virtual. The first day of the conference is a series of presentations from each working group. And initially it was planned to have an hour, and we have half an hour, which is supposed to be sort of an update on what we're doing, as well as time for discussion, all in a half an hour. And so what I wanted to do today was I've talked to people individually, but I wanted to see if there were any other highlights that we wanted to make sure got included. And one of the interesting pieces is that we do have 3 presentations the second day on Thursday the 7th, so we don't have to cover everything. The first one, I call it recreation, but I believe education really is recreation with a purpose. And that is with Dr. Thomas and the Kentucky Nature-Based Solutions Project team. And then we have the improving river accessibility for outdoor recreators using geospatial data. And that's with Brad and James Major and David Rutter. And so that's the second day. And then John Stroughton and I are going to do a piece on the historic lock houses on the river. And so before we jump into the agenda for this first day, I wanted to see if, Harry, is there anything you want to talk about your presentation and how it might relate to our work today?
Sure, David. This is a collaboration. Some of you may already be aware that there is a Kentucky-based collaboration promoting nature-based solutions, particularly to flood managers. So we're looking toward tapping into FEMA funding for nature-based solutions based on recent guidance provided by FEMA. And the team members include not only representatives from the flood mitigation community, but also a representative from the Nature Conservancy and a couple of representatives from the EPA. That's Drew Parker and a couple of his colleagues. And so this is bringing together federal, state, and university partners to promote nature-based solutions across Kentucky. And Matop has taken the lead for the Division of Water and created a really nice presentation that describes the activities of this group.
Chris has asked me to be moderator for these sessions for the afternoon. So my role is to learn how to pronounce people's names. And it's Matab?
She pronounces it Matop.
Matop, okay. And I got the rest of them. And how about Brad or James or David? What is the essence of your presentation and how that fits in with what we're doing?
Anybody else want to jump into that one? A big part of it is really going back to some research showing that accessibility, people knowing where and how to engage with the rivers is one of the issues in terms of getting out and doing the recreation, and that each of our projects is an attempt to fill that void and meet that need and get people out into our waterways. And I will say one other thing to highlight, David, for your discussion up above on the Ohio River Recreation Trail is our AIS data now that we show on the guide goes well beyond our 274 miles. We're now all the way up to Pittsburgh and all the way down to the Tennessee River. It doesn't get quite all the way to Cairo yet, but we do have the real-time commercial traffic within those, and it includes the Kanawha as well as the Monongahela.
And could you describe what that AIS piece, is that going to be part of this discussion from 2 to 2:30?
It will be mentioned within that. I'm not going to show off the guide or anything within that because we're time constrained.
Brad or James, anything to add?
Yeah, so I'll be talking a little bit about some of the technology and partnerships that we're exercising to complete our data inventory and our gap analysis. So I think that complements David and the RMS's work really well.
Right, and I'll be presenting on the other rivers that aren't covered by the projects that Brad and David are working on, and show what rivers we already have on our recreation database and what rivers we were going to target to add to that database in the Ohio River Basin.
You know, and one thing that we have to sort of keep in the back of our mind is what recommendations eventually do we want to recommend to our government to expand funding, create new funding, or where it might fit in existing funding. That's the essence of our plan. And then John and I are going to do the historic lock houses, which we did a similar presentation for Orbit, and it'll go in greater detail. Interestingly, for the Pittsburgh folks, there's one of these that's for sale 36 miles downstream of Pittsburgh, and it's surrounded 100% by Beaver County Park. And so it'd be sort of an interesting thing tucked in between two of the islands of the Ohio River National Wildlife Refuge. So we're going to sort of start to encourage access to these islands. Then we want to sort of move on to the half-an-hour presentation and discussion. But we've had two other folks join us, I think. Gordon Garner was just online. I saw there's Gordon. Gordon, we introduced ourselves. Who are you?
I'm a board member with the Kentucky Waterways Alliance.
And very active, an ex-commissioner of Orsenco, and interestingly, is one of these interdisciplinary people, and the nature-based recreation or the ecosystem restoration program is facilitated by the National Wildlife Federation, which the Kentucky Waterways Alliance is the state affiliate for them. So
yeah, in fact, I just got off of an affiliate call focused on environmental justice and equity.
Well, thank you very much. We'd love to learn more about it. We did yesterday, Harry organized the diversity initiative for ORBA, and we had a presentation on environmental justice and how it relates to the Ohio River Basin. And one of the pieces
I told them that ORBA had this as one of their goals to include environmental justice and equity in the efforts that are going on. So I bragged on you.
Harry, you know, this is off agenda, but maybe you could just briefly talk about the offer from EPA about ORBA working with them to improve their environmental justice instruments.
Yeah, so it was a very good group that presented yesterday, and the presentation will be on our Orba website if you want to access it. But what David was just referring to is there's a US EPA tool, the name of which is now escaping me. It's EJ Screen, which is a place-based tool for being able to identify disadvantaged communities and so forth. And it includes places where there are environmental issues so that you can see how those two correlate. And one of the things that Sally Gutierrez with the US EPA brought up was that there was not much water data, water problem data in that tool. And so one of the things we'll be exploring is whether the Ohio River Basin or some portion thereof could work with the US EPA to help work on a pilot for the water part of that tool.
But it was a very interesting crew that got put together for this, and they meet twice a week or twice a month, and have some very active discussions. And so it's I think, a great potential for us to interact with it. I want to spend some time on our presentation at 1:15. And we have really 7 different topics that have been discussed, all in a half an hour. So we're looking at sort of very short presentations. But if there's other items that could be included, should be included, that's the purpose of today's call. And so we're going to start off with just sort of an overview of the committee, because many people, one of the objectives is to share our work with the other working groups and the academic community. So not everybody's been involved with each of our programs. So we're going to go over the committees and our charges, and then go right into Dr. Perry Thomas with Funding Water Trails, who's working with West Virginia and ERISA on developing a survey around how trails are funded. Perry, do you want to talk anything about that, or?
I'll just clarify that we are focusing in on access areas with that survey. It's under development, and if there's anyone here who would like to review an early draft, I welcome your input.
And so it's basically how these access areas got funded and how they are maintained with current funds, right?
Right, who's involved, and really to crowdsource across the ORBA membership information about access areas that work well, that we can then share with others who are creating access areas.
Then the second part of it, or the next item, Dan Vogler, who is head of planning for the Louisville district, has a PAS project with ORBA and or Sanco that is looking at the recreation gap analysis, basically where the Ohio River Recreation Trail goes, and it from Portsmouth on down to West Point. He did talk about it at Orbit, and the Pittsburgh district was especially interested to say, let's do the same thing up here. So Dan is going to talk about their protocols, their reasons why they did what they did, and share the data that is coming out of this current study, which should be done by October 6th. So he might just put a link into their final study. It might be still under review, so he might just talk about it. We'll see. One of the interesting pieces for me is that looking at our stretch of the river that I'm focused on, they've identified 4 regions that, at least according to the National Park Service standards, need additional access. And so they delved into the data and are trying to identify additional locations that could be on public property already, that have road access. And then they are going to at least do a preliminary discussion on how they might be funded through land and water conservation funds or whatever. So I'm really looking forward to his presentation. And one of the pieces that hopefully come out of this is the other 4 districts of Nashville, Huntington, and Pittsburgh picking up the same. And from what Dan says, there's been preliminary discussions and there's interest in it. Surprisingly to me, it's the first time that they've really developed this strategy of identifying recreational gaps and how to develop a plan to fix that. Any items, anything that we should make sure Dan covers? Because I'll be in community, I have a call with him tomorrow. Is there anything that we want to make sure he covers? And then the next item is with Mr. Rhodes and with Francis Manon, looking at a new initiative along the Ohio River and transforming well, the Ohio River Recreation Trail is going to become a program of the Ohio River Way. And we're in the process now of trying to have as much support and structure as Brad does on the Tennessee River. And so we're just, we just want to follow those Tennessee folks and get the same. Brewster, any comments about, the Ohio River Way or the Recreation Trail or this initiative that's coming up?
Well, only to say that we've made a lot of progress in organizing ourselves more formally and now have an official partnership with a nonprofit entity that I've been on the board of for 20 years called the Ohio River Way, whose mission in 2002 when it was started is exactly what, ironically enough, the mission now is of the Ohio River Recreation Trail. So we're basically moving our operation into that nonprofit entity, and I'm the board chair. David's now the vice chair. And so we basically now have a 501c3 entity that allows us to receive corporate and foundation contributions that require tax deductibility. So we're organizationally structured to move into the next phase of our work. So it's a good development. Is that what you were looking at, David? Yeah.
Yeah, and the history of the Ohio River Way. Can you just talk a little bit about their fundraising prowess and what they raised money for?
Well, the organization was initially designed to create, ironically enough, a recreation trail from Maysville to Madison, and to promote connections between all the different river communities, promote recreation, stewardship, and engagement along that corridor, very much like what we're trying to do now. The organization did a good job initially in getting people focused on that ultimate goal, but then decided to focus very narrowly on raising money to actually develop the Ohio River Trail that goes along the Ohio from downtown Cincinnati to connect to the trail that ultimately goes to Cleveland.
Well, and a bunch of other folks too.
So the bottom line is the organization raised $8.5 million over the last 6 months from corporate leadership in Cincinnati and individuals. And now that will leverage $60 million in state and federal funding to develop this trail system in the greater Cincinnati area. So it's a very successful operation. Rob Portman, the senator from Ohio's brother, and his wife led the fundraising drive. And so we will inherit in some ways a relationship with those folks who just made major contributions to develop this trail system in Cincinnati, and get back now to the initial mission of the organization, which was to essentially do what we're doing now, but now with an expanded distance from Portsmouth down to West Point. So there's the organization has good standing and visibility in the greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky region, with a relationship with funders who in turn, as I say, donated $8.5 million to this trail effort. And so we hope that they will also be interested in our broader mission. So that's the bottom line. It's a good move for us and positions us to take the next step in development organizationally. We're just trying to be like the Kentucky River Line. Okay, Brad, we're learning from you. And I think we now have an organizational structure to help us go to the next stage.
We just need a TVA.
You've become the envy of the valley pretty quickly. You're outpacing our fundraising. So congratulations on that.
No, we haven't raised 8 million. That was for the development of the trail system in Greater Cincinnati. But we do have the good news, and David will describe this if he'd like, is that we have, I think, good leads on 150 to 200,000 bucks in startup money from a variety of foundations in the region, from Louisville to Cincinnati and west and east, to help get us off the ground. So we're poised to take a great leap forward, as they would say.
Yeah.
In China.
Well, we did get support from the mayor of Louisville, and he's putting in $50,000. Well, he's not, the city is. And so, you know, the intent is to then have each one of the other river towns contribute, just as the Great Miami River Way does. And so it's really a coalition of the mayors up and down the Great Miami River, and we hope to do the same thing here in Louisville or around the Ohio River. So those are the pieces that we have, and then you know, the last part is this discussion and comments, and then to invite people to participate on the next day on October 7th, and then also invite people, which I hope everybody here will join in on us, for the Ohio River Recreation Summit on October 14th. I don't think, once again, it'll be as, well, it will be different than what the Tennessee River Line did. I watched their summit, and boy, I tell you, set the bar high, Brad. And so, you know, we want to do the same thing here on the Ohio River. One of the pieces that I'm going to do in the next little bit of time is reach out to the Parkersburg folks and to the Pittsburgh, you know, River Trail from Pittsburgh, 68 miles down to Beaver Creek, and to encourage, so we have a greater diversity of river trails representing the basin. So the question I have is now, what's missing? You know, only have a half an hour. Is there something that we could add, should add to these 7 items? You know, we can share any documents we want to, but is there another part of the working group? Is this process of saying, here we have 3 other presentations the next day, is that enough, or should we highlight something more right now? Open for discussion.
David, within those other trail groups that are out there, since the Ohio River Recreation Trail is digital guide is there, it's beginning to expand beyond in terms of the data that's on it. If any of those trail systems wanted to add their points of access in any of that, we have the online form for them to add those points. Certainly encourage them to do that as the poor man's way to expand the guide and get that information out there.
EJ, as you are a West Virginia guy, do you know the folks there in Parkersburg and Marietta who got the national recognition for a national water trail?
Sadly, I do not have any visibility on the efforts in Parkersburg, Marietta area. I have caught wind of that over the years, but in my current capacity with the Corps, no, sir. My comment to the group, though, is, has this group had any engagement with Bill Curry of the West Virginia Flat Water Trail Commission here in West Virginia? It's a new commission that the governor stood up. And if not, maybe I can do some behind the scenes connections as well. I think Bill would benefit tremendously from some of these conversations we're having today.
We've had a couple email exchanges, but nothing more than that. And so if you could make the formal invite, that would be great.
Yes, sir. Let me see what I can do. I talk to Bill on social media about every day, so let me see what I can do there, brother.
Is everybody familiar with that commission that has been recently set up in West Virginia? Could you give a minute overview of what it is and how it got established?
Yeah, so Bill Curry is a friend of mine. He's a good friend. He's an advocate for flat water trails here in West Virginia. You know, we're pretty much known for whitewater rafting and kayaking, right, in this central part of the state. Bill's leaned forward and really has promoted this idea of the Coe River watershed, that it flows into the Kanawha. It's part of the Kanawha River watershed, the Coe River, made up of 3 small rivers. I won't get into all the geography of that, but and he has really done a great job of doing restoration on that river and bringing it back to life. He does an annual float that has about 1,200 participants, very much in line with what Cincinnati's trying to do. Bill has been very active in the legislative space, trying to get this committee established in West Virginia to focus on this. I read today that the Appalachian Regional Commission has invested about $500,000 in flat water investment, water trail investment in central West Virginia, mainly Braxton County, West Virginia, which is the Elk River system, and then up in the northern part of the state. So trying to pull, we had a lot of conversation today, how do we get the leadership capacity? How do we get capacity? How do we get these grants down into our system? And I just think there's just some really benefit that if we can get Bill connected, I think there could be some benefit for the efforts up in the Kanawha River Valley, especially, and then up into the Coe River Valley. So this is fantastic. I'm glad I jumped this call today. Thank you for having me.
Now, David, does the AIS data go up where PJ was just talking about?
I don't think we get up into the Coe River or anything with that. It's, and I'm not sure what kind of barge traffic that they.
There isn't any.
Okay. It goes up the Kanawha as far as Charleston.
Yeah. Yeah, the Coe River is a non-navigable waterway. It is truly a flat water recreational trail. Today, there's no barge traffic. There's some first 10 miles of the river receive powerboat traffic, of course, but after that, there's a lower falls that blocks any motorized powerboat traffic further up into the watershed. So this group the Coe River group has been very active in this space. So yeah, there's no navigation on that system.
I would certainly trim my comments, PJ, if you think Bill Curry would want a couple minutes on this agenda to share what he's doing, because this is the Ohio River Basin, and we want to make sure we cover as many sections as possible.
Yes, sir. Let me reach out to him this evening, see if I can get a dialogue going, and at least maybe get him invited get him to sign on to the meeting just to start the engagement. If I can do that, I think we'll be in the right direction. So let's see what I can do. No promises. I'll try to see what I can pull together for the group. Thank you.
And how about Trish or Renee? Do you know the folks with the Pittsburgh water trail system down 68 miles?
That's a negative, sir. I have very limited contact in Pittsburgh other than my kayak dealer. So yeah, no visibility in Pittsburgh.
Trish, do you know them?
I do not. I'm not aware of that that organization.
You know, I have I paddled it with my wife this past summer and have met several. It appears to me to be a retired military organization almost. And the one guy said he doesn't do phone, he doesn't do email, he uses US mail. But you go to every boat ramp they have, and there is the Ohio River Trail safety procedures and natural history of the site. Beautiful right there where Beaver Creek comes out, huge signs. And he said they've raised money to do every boat ramp in their 68-mile stretch. And so, and it's a recreation trail, not a water trail, but it's both river recreation and a trail along the river down 70 miles. Renee, do you know them at all?
Hi. No, I'm not aware of them at all, but it sounds fabulous, and I'm certainly going to check it out as quickly as I can.
Okay, well, I'll send you a link to them. They've actually been there since maybe 1999, so it's been there for a while. But as I said, it seems to be retired fishermen and canoeists who are a bit.
Thank you.
Any other comments on our presentation? I hope everybody can join, and feel free to be engaged in the chat and comment along. I think it'd be a good showing, because one of the purposes of this, and really what Orba is trying to do, is to blend the working groups together. So, you know, how recreation supports the ecosystem restoration, how we have to interact with the commercial traffic, which is a given, how we are building support for knowledge and education working group. So I hope you can participate in the whole thing. I found it very valuable last year, and just to let you know, it's a pure pleasure. I was in charge of the technology last year, and it was a chore. And I'm just glad that Thomas More is taking it on, even though they did tap me to provide the Zoom account for 2 of the working sessions. So I'll be there. So that's it. The next piece is sort of an open-ended discussion. Jen Bowman from the, let me think, Ohio State. Is that right, Harry? Or is it Ohio University?
Ohio University.
Ohio University. Anyway, she is chair of the Knowledge and Education Working Group. And one of the pieces, they're putting together 2 projects that relate to our work. One of them is a research agenda that the Corps was very interested in. And what, you know, over the next 10 years, what topics do we really need answered? You know, what topics really deserve research? And so she's reached out to each of the working groups and asked that question. And hopefully at the conference, she'll have a survey instrument which can start that process off of developing a research needs assessment. You know, what research should go on by the universities or by federal agencies that's long-term in nature. And so I just wanted to throw that out now. Are there any thoughts or comments, or, you know, I wanted to get our juices flowing. Could you clarify that question a little bit, Harry? Did I get that accurate?
We said originally there was no knowledge to inform decisions working group. And we thought that that was something that was part of every single working group. But then it was viewed as so important, we pulled it out separately so it would not get lost in the other stuff that was going on. So you all need to really view that working group as your voice to get research and education funding for the priorities that you have, for the needs that you have. And Harry has a bias in all this. So I'll just tell you one of the ones that I would like to see. You know, we're working on trying to do some understanding of the value of a river and the value of the water uses. But outdoor recreation in the Ohio River Basin is such a fragmented industry that it's a challenge to figure out just what is the value of outdoor recreation in the basin. And if you want to inspire somebody to, at the federal level, to put more money into it, it's really nice to be able to say, and here's how that leverages business for the basin. So at any rate, I'll throw that out as one I think is important for this group.
So, you know, and that was the second topic that we've been asked for also, is just that. So Chris Lawrence has taken this on. There was maybe a 1993 federally funded study on the valuation of the Ohio River, which tended to focus more on the transportation aspect, how many barges go up and down here and on and on and on. Dan Vogler told me that the Corps is actually starting to look at, because right now when they try to understand the value of these locks and dams they built, right now they do it purely by tonnage of what's shipped and what's the value of that. And is there value added by recreation? So these pools, can the Corps count the Ohio River, waterfronts in Cincinnati and Huntington and in Louisville? Louisville spent a fortune on it as a way of justifying the expenditures of these processes. Now, PJ, you're actively involved with Chris on this. Is there another aspect to this that we should really think about?
Yeah, that's actually my day job as the chief of the Planning Center of Expertise for Risk Informed Economic Division for Inland Navigation. We are the BCR guys for the nation when it comes to NED and transportation rate savings and the value our system provides. So that's what I do every day. So we look at the NED aspect associated with the value of our locks and dams through transportation rate savings versus the other modal transportation, surface modal transportations. Now, what we're really pushing into is if we just take Winfield Lock and Dam there on the Kanawha River, you got John Amos, you've got varied water intakes, you've got some significant activity going, regional economic development activity that is going on associated with that pool to navigation our lock and dam infrastructure creates. So by law, we can count that after we get above unity at 1. So we are having a really deep conversation within the Army Corps of Engineers of how do we ensure the purity of our NED transportation rate analysis and value to the nation, and then how do we successfully capture these true costs and these true benefits at the regional economic development level, and then bring those forward to inform decision makers of the true value our infrastructure provides the system. So we're in it. We're deep in this. It's one of the reasons I'm on the group to help with Chris is I think this is a very important, not just for what we do at the Corps, but what we do as a river community. And so I'm trying my best to keep that conversation going, but I'm a lone voice sometimes. But groups like this help tremendously. So thank you for the opportunity.
Brewster, do you have a comment?
Well, if I could say, PJ, it is huge. I think it would be huge if the Corps could collaborate with others to do an analysis that documents the economic impact of the fact that there is a recreation waterway that allows marinas, fuel docks, floating restaurants, residential and commercial development that is designed to connect people to the river as opposed to turning their backs on the river, right? And so I don't know how you put the value of fishing, of all boat sales that end up with people making use of those boats in the Ohio, again, the fuel sales. So there's a huge potential additional economic benefit from what the Corps has done to create waterways that people want to recreate on. And hopefully we can collaborate with you to make that happen.
Yeah,
And
Brewster,
to in turn make the argument to decision makers in DC and at the state levels that this is a huge economic driver for the region, but especially for the communities along the river.
Yeah, so and I don't want to drive this conversation too deep into this, but so Brewster, you're right. What we're seeing in the next Water Resource Development Act, and I think Carrie can confirm this, is we're seeing this idea of multi-use authorization for our structures. Originally, when these structures were built on the Ohio River system, the Kanawha, the supporting Ohio navigation system, the original intent and use was navigation. It was commercial navigation. And so that tied our policies up, and that tied our investment justifications up in that policy of what that authorization was for. So as we're seeing some change in the idea of the authorized use of the project to a more multi-use, multifunctional project, I think that conversation starts opening this door in a logical way that allows us to address those concerns you just put on the table, sir.
And I know that the Corps can't really get into legislative kind of issues, but one of the things that we can as ORBA look at is the whole argument of national economic development versus regional economic development. And I get the reason behind that. They didn't want to count when you dredge, Boston Harbor and you move ships from New York to Boston. They didn't want to count that because that doesn't benefit the nation. But a lot of the benefits that we're talking about would not have a negative impact anywhere else in the nation, and therefore is helping our nation. And so I think that whole national economic development versus regional economic development is a place where some of us in ORBA ought to have a discussion about maybe trying to influence some of that thinking.
Any other comments? This is a plea actually for folks to think about the the economic impact of recreation. And we've talked about it. If you read this 1990 study that was done by maybe the University in Cincinnati with funding from the National Park Service, it really didn't mention recreation. So as Chris is creating this version, we want to include that. So how we collect data, we don't even know how many motorboats, like in Kentucky, like Ohio, you know how many registered kayaks and canoes and motorboats there are. In Kentucky, we don't know, we know how many registered motorboats there are, but we don't know how many boats there are. And so how we think about that's just an open plea for thinking about it. In our last little bit of time here, because we want to end in about 5 minutes, there's 2 other updates which I sent out in that very long email. What I did is I just copied everything. And there's a conference coming up on the 13th and 14th, same day as the Ohio River Recreation Trail Conference on the 14th, but done by a crew outside of the Smoky Mountains on the outdoor economy. And it's funded by the Outdoor Industries of America, I think. But anyway, they're focusing just on the impact of the outdoor economy. And then the second piece is from Victor Elam, who has been very good at forwarding federal funding opportunities and grant funding opportunities. The last one, which I did attach to it, is, let's see, it's called right here, the funding possibilities, request for proposals, conservation, recruitment, retention, and reactivation. And according to Vic, they have changed. This is really fish and wildlife funding, but a private foundation, grants from $250 to $1 million, really focused, and what their intent is urban young adults over 18. And so if the adventure crew would be interested in expanding into 18-year-old plus, this is a tremendous opportunity. It told me that they, it was just recently released, so the competition's not going to be too tough. So if anybody is interested, I did send it to our metro parks. And so, which, in Louisville, we're building this thing called the Shawnee Outdoor Learning Center in the middle of our West End. And so Metro Parks is going to apply for a mentor program for their kid program. And so how to develop folks in the disadvantaged communities. That's all we have for the day. I wanted to run around and see if other folks had any comments, and we're just going to start down at the bottom of the screen and say, Mark, any final thoughts, or what's your observations from this meeting?
Well, I think we've got a lot, done a lot, and we've got a lot to work on. I wanted to check with you just quickly. Did Aaron Tolliver, is he connected with you regarding being part of this committee?
I don't remember the name, but I will double check that. And if you could reintroduce me, that'd be great.
Oh, well, he'd be a great asset. Thanks.
Harry is good at sending names along,
Okay.
and so I will follow up with that. And so let's just go. Gordon, have you any observations or thoughts, or what's your reaction to today's meeting? Anything that we should work on?
No, I'm a little overwhelmed at this scale of things that are going on in terms of just so many people volunteering and putting forth effort on this. It's pretty amazing. So,
Well, we want to get you more involved, sir.
yeah,
Renee.
well, with what's left of me, but I think what we're doing is so much needed and has been for so long, and it's just so encouraging to see the positive efforts that everybody's putting into this. So, thank all of you.
If anybody comes down to Louisville, Gordon and his wife and children have a wonderful art gallery on Market Street. And I was there yesterday or 2 days ago, and they have a fascinating exhibit on insects and bird life interpreted through art. And it's just some amazing sculpture, little cases, just wonderful. So Gordon not only is one of these research scientists, bureaucrats, but he's also an artist, and so or at least has artists in his family.
Yeah, no, I do building maintenance and support the artists, but a weekend trip to Nulu in Louisville, you get to see some good things.
Trish, any good words for the good of the order here?
No, just again, fascinating information, and it's always exciting to hear about new water trails or expanded water trails. And I like what David said about the guide covering more of the river as well.
Renee?
This is just really exciting. I'm so like other people have said, it's so exciting to see this happening, and where we don't take our waterways for granted or like they're just open pit sewers, that these are wonderful resources that we can leverage and get people out into nature.
How about you, Billy Bennett? You've been quiet.
Yeah, no, I'm excited for the upcoming event and look forward to being a part of it. And I just, kind of just mirror what everybody else is saying. It's a huge project, a huge undertaking, but we have a lot of people from a lot of very backgrounds involved, and so I think that makes it for a better committee.
And Billy is a chair of one of the committees of the Knowledge and Working Group Committee, working with Jen. So thank you, Billy, for doing both. And he's also very active with AmeriCorps, which if we want to have a whole other discussion, and maybe at one of these meetings, we could focus in on AmeriCorps as they are greatly expanding their resources. And so, keep up the good work, Billy. Perry, anything else for the good of the order?
Just looking forward to seeing everybody at the summit. It's coming right up.
James?
I just say that I'm always excited to learn more about a part of the country that I'm not super familiar with. I'm excited about the potential of bringing Bill Curry in and talking to him more about the West Virginia Flatwater Trail to see how much of that trail is potentially already on our database, or if we can add more and get that kind of aligned together.
Not to interrupt this flow, but PJ, maybe when you talk to Mr. Curry, you can invite him to our next meeting and have a presentation for all of us of what West Virginia Flatwater Trails really are about.
I believe he's calling me right now.
Well, he must, his ears must be burning. Brad,
Say hi to him for me, all right? Say hi to him for me.
Brad, anything for the good of the order?
There's just a lot to be excited about here. I appreciate the geographic diversity that's growing with the group. It used to be the main stem Ohio and Brad, but now there's a lot of other folks and a lot of different river reaches in the basin that are on the call, and that's really exciting to see.
All right, David Rudder.
I have nothing further to add.
Brewster, anything else for the good of the order here?
Well, it just strikes me that it seems from the time I've been involved in this effort that we've spent the last 2.5 years sort of planning, dialoguing, thinking about what would be great if we could do. And now I think we're on the edge of actually doing it. So Harry, hats off to you for orchestrating this show here. And we look forward to continuing to be part of it and looking forward to the next year being the time when we really make big stuff happen.
Harry, you got the last word.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that was said. This is one exciting working group, and it's just so fun to see all that you all have in play. And so as you come to the summit, yours is going to be one that is really going to get people excited about Orba. So just remember to give them the hooks to be able to link up with you and with Orba, because what you all are doing is just outstanding. Thank you.
And the final commercial is this Saturday and Sunday down at the historic town of West Point, Kentucky, which is on the confluence of the Salt River and the Ohio River. The National Park Service is hosting a Chautauqua Festival, a storytelling festival, featuring John James Audubon, Mr. York. It really is a combination. They're calling it the 3 historic trails that the Ohio River Recreation Trail, the John Muir Trail, which the National Park Service is helping plan from West Point down to Savannah, Georgia, and the Lewis and Clark Trail. And so that's this Saturday and Sunday. If you need an excuse to come to Louisville. And one final pitch, and it's always fascinating to me, West Point is a declining town. They lost their school this year. There's been a school there since 1812, and this year it closed down. They lost their last restaurant last year, and so the National Park Service is investing a fair amount of energy to think about the value of recreation as a tourist destination on the edges of Louisville. And so come and join us this Saturday and Sunday. It should be a fascinating time. Thank you very much for your time. We did it in 1 hour, and please register for that, and register and come and hear Senator Portman and Mayor Fisher and Representative Massey on the 14th of October, along with our 40 river towns that are going to be actively participating on the 14th. Thank you very much. We'll see everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.